Welcome to the week 2 video for Mth120 Statistics. This week we finally get to do a little actual statistics. We're going to be working on summarizing data with some graphs and tables. And I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about one particular graph and what it might show us about the data and what kind of interesting questions it might prompt. So I want to talk about a histogram. We're going to use the data that will come up periodically this course is school data, Illinois school data, in particular public and charter school data for Illinois. And one of the variables that is in this data set is the percent of students who identify as Black or African American within each school. And so what a histogram would look like is it would have along the horizontal axis the percent of students who identify, whose parents identify them as Black or African American. And then the vertical axis would be the number of schools within that particular interval. So for example, that first rectangle, this 2,551 schools have between 0 and 10% students who identify as Black or African American. Similarly, there's 322 schools between 10 and 20%, and 160 schools between 20 and 30%. And then we have all the rest. And then there's this odd box at the far right. 272 schools have more than 90% of their students identify as Black or African American. What I want us to do this semester is more than just do some calculations and make some graphs. I want us to be able to look at the information that we calculate or the displays and graphs that we make and use them to answer questions about the world around us. This particular graph makes me wonder why is it that almost all the schools have less than 10% of their students identify as Black or African American. And then there's this little chunk over on the far right that's almost all the students are Black or African American. What does this say about Illinois? What it says is that Illinois is very segregated. The question that, at least for me, is prompted immediately after that is why? Why is Illinois so segregated? There are a variety of factors that go into that. But one of the most significant ones is a long-standing housing practice actually prompted by and promoted by the federal government called redlining. If you haven't heard of redlining, redlining is based on a set of documents that the government wanted to create, the Federal Housing Authority, to create, to know which different neighborhoods were appropriate for the Federal Housing Authority to subsidize those loans and guarantee those loans to buying houses. So there were different criteria for which neighborhoods were good and which ones were bad. And each neighborhood was given a rating, an A, B, C, or D rating. In the end, they came up with maps. And these maps look something like this. This is a map of Chicago. The policy gets its name from the areas in red that were the riskiest neighborhoods. So here's the thing. Why is this important? What does this have to do with our histogram? Some of the criteria for what made a neighborhood risky is a single home owned by a Black or African American made the entire neighborhood risky. So as a consequence, other neighborhoods, white neighborhoods in particular, had covenants in the homeowners association that it was illegal, it was not allowed to purchase a home in that neighborhood unless you were white or of Caucasian descent. Quote, the buyer agrees that no estate or possession of the said premises shall be sold, transferred, or conveyed to any person not of the Caucasian race. So what were in these redlining documents? We have documentation now from a variety of cities where they've been scanned in that had the comments written by those who created these documents. So here's that map of Chicago. Let's look at two particular areas. I'm going to read from the description. This is an old district and may be said to be declining, due in large measure to the threat of colored encroachment into the area from the north. And then in the area to the north, it reads, to the south of South Chicago Avenue is a white neighborhood affected by this colored area, fearing infiltration. There are no restrictions except the local property owners association. Again, the clear implication here is that a neighborhood was good, but its property value went down if there were Black or African Americans in this neighborhood. Here's another redlining map from Camden, New Jersey. I want to read two other descriptions from adjacent areas. Negro district on the edge of this section, but splendid cooperation of all residents in this section will always prevent spread. Here's another one. It is 100% poor class Negroes, practically all on relief. A high wall, however, prevents their spread. So there was a neighborhood of white residents that feared encroachment of black residents. And so to keep them from moving in, they built a wall to keep their property values high. This isn't necessarily a class where we're going to spend all semester talking about social justice issues. However, I do want us to look at the material that we get, do some analysis. When we do a graph, think about why is that? What does that graph tell us? What can we infer from that? What can we learn about that? What can it tell us about the world around us, about the people we see, about the decisions that are made, about why things are the way they are? Statistics is more than just calculations and summaries and saying a mean and a standard deviation. It's about using data and calculations and graphs and analysis to answer questions and to learn more. And that's what this class is going to be about.